Well, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to day 2 of the CAS Virtual Showcase 2021. And this is a secondary session on moving from GCSE to A-level and in the land of all things computer science. Today, I think we feel immensely lucky to call on the expertise of a brilliant panel. So we have Sarah Trickey, Claire Griesbeert and Javier de las Heras, who I will introduce in turn during the session. For those who don't yet know me, my name is Tim Wilson, and I am an outreach manager for CAS and today's host for the session. We are also joined by Pete Marshman, who is also an outreach manager for CAS and who is the moderator for today's session and will be monitoring the question window. Just before we start, I have a couple of things to share, basically housekeeping stuff. So during the session, please use the question window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions or share comments. So at the top of the window, you'll see a lovely little orange rectangle, which can be expanded or collapsed. Pete will be making a note of the questions as the session goes on, and if time allows at the end, and hopefully we'll find 4 or 5 minutes to answer your questions. If time does not allow at the end, responses will be posted on the CAS forum and across our various social media channels. Talking of which, I hope that many of you are on social media, and if you are, please post, repost, tweet, retweet, share, comment, whichever social channel you rock, using the hashtag CASVirtual21. And as a reminder, all attendees are in listen-only mode. So that's the housekeeping out of the way. So let's kick on with today's session, moving from GCSE to A-level. And our first speaker today is Sarah Trickey. Sarah is a head of faculty for computing, business and media at a secondary school in Luton. She's also an NQT induction tutor and oversees all the trainee teachers from 3 different training providers at her school. Sarah is a fellow of the Chartered College of Teaching, a member of the CAS board, a CAS Community Leader, has a master's in education, sorry Sarah, with distinction, and is about to embark on her doctorate in education as well. Wow. And as you will see and hear, Sarah is passionate about all things education, and you will find her also on her fantastic Instagram profile, which is at Teach with Mrs. T. Anyway, Sarah, it's all yours. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for that phenomenal introduction, Tim. So as Tim said, my name is Sarah and I've been teaching for a long time now, since 2003. And over the course of my career, I have taught both GCSE, Key Stage 3, GCSE and A-level computer science. At the school I'm currently in, we do not have a sixth form, so we prepare our students to leave us at the end of year 11 and embark upon their college journeys. So I'm going to talk from the perspective of that school environment and that school context when you're not essentially growing your own A-level students. How do you prepare your students for life after your classroom and prepare them for that journey into A-level study? And as Tim mentioned, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Teach with Mrs. T. You can visit my blog site, which is also on the screen now, just my little plugs there. But moving on, when we're looking at the differences between GCSE and A-level, and I'm sure my fellow presenters and panelists today will talk about similar things, the main thing to look at is the differences in the assessment objectives. Now, regardless of the exam board that you choose or your students are studying with, the assessment objectives remain broadly the same for both GCSE and then for A-level. And you notice the slight semantic differences in the different assessment objectives. We've got to demonstrate knowledge, to then apply that knowledge, and then analyse problems. And it's AO3, the actual programming element, that takes the biggest jump. When we'll look at each of the assessment objectives in turn, and I'll come back to that one in a moment. But looking at assessment objective 1, for GCSE, we expect our students to show that they know and they understand the key concepts and principles of computer science. And it remains quite broad in that respect across all the exam boards. When you move to A-level, it then specifically stipulates that students need to know about abstraction, logic, algorithms, and data representation. So when it comes to demonstrating that knowledge and understanding, students need to be able to show in quite significant detail that they actually know what abstraction, logic, algorithms, and data representation are, and they need to show that they understand those things. And so building on from the end of GCSE up into A-level, you're looking at really unpicking how they show that knowledge within their answers and how they show that they understand by sort of beginning to apply that knowledge, which brings us in then to AO2. When you look at the GCSE second assessment objective, again, they're applying that knowledge and understanding of key computer science principles. But with A-level, they're then looking at analysing problems in computational terms. So they've actually got to start thinking more computationally and demonstrating that they know and understand what that looks like and how that might translate, if you will, in practice in their written answers. AO3 is the biggest jump. Of course, we know we won't talk about NEAs and internal assessments in the context of this year, but under normal circumstances, the non-examined assessment component of GCSE for most exam boards now is an internally provided opportunity for an extended programming project. Generally speaking, the projects don't tend to count towards the actual final awarding grade, certainly does for OCR and the exam board that I use, but students need to have been given the opportunity for a minimum of 20 hours to complete an extended programming project. When you move into A-level, it actually becomes quite different because they are 20%, worth 20%, sorry, of the final overall grade. And students have to go from design to implementation to evaluation of a computer system that solves a specific problem provided by the exam board, and they have to be able to actually utilize their programming skills. And arguably, it's the programming skills that are one of the largest gaps to fill, particularly in the current climate that we've been in for the past 18 months. And I feel that this will be where the biggest gaps will lie in our students entering our A-level courses. For me, it's about, with a school that doesn't have a sixth form, it's about providing my students with the opportunity and the resources to be able to go out and independently practice and develop their programming skills. When you're looking at the main differences, A-level courses have a coursework, as I said. It's usually 20% of the overall grade for a traditional linear A-level, and it's an independent programming project. And independence is one of the key words that, again, I'm sure the vast majority of the panelists are going to talk about today. The level of independence that's required from students increases massively from GCSE to A-level. The amount of external reading, pre-reading, sort of flipped learning, the expectations of that are a lot higher. The curriculum time that is given to A-level allows you to cover the basics, but students will be expected to go and further that knowledge and their understanding by independently seeking out other sources of information to bolster their notes and to help with their understanding. In addition, the level of extended writing requirements increase for the A-level examinations. You usually see a maximum of 6-mark extended answer questions at GCSE for the sort of essay-based questions where the quality of written communication is assessed. You will find up to 20 marks for essay-style questions at A-level, and the formula that is required for students to be able to write academically within these questions is significantly higher than GCSE, and it's about training our students to be able to write in that academic way. There are lots of transition workbooks that are available out there that enable students to prepare themselves for A-level in terms of their basic knowledge, but helping them to really structure a more extended piece of writing, and dare I say it, the tags will have helped somewhat with this. So for the students in my own school, we've done extended writing and investigation projects to help assess their grades. And so that level of referencing and the academic nature of how they've had to structure their answers will help prepare them for A-level, but it is quite a big jump from GCSE to A-level. I mean, it's quite often said that the hardest thing you will ever study is your A-levels, and the jump from GCSE to A-level is massive. And again, the skills in terms of writing, more extended analysis, they need to show more lines of reasoning and deeper levels of analysis and evaluation, and that varies from exam board to exam board in terms of what they're looking for. The general content of the syllabus across the A levels builds on GCSE. You will often see a few more additions in, particularly in terms of Boolean algebra and logic. The programming skills will be extended. You'll have to look at more options and the different types of language that there are, and students need to have an awareness of which sort of programming style would be used for which context. And so giving students the opportunity to read about that prior to A level would be beneficial to them. And that pretty much summarizes what I have to say. And in my experience, what I tend to find is the basic knowledge that students have in relation to computer science, they have a solid grounding with a good GCSE. I would, generally speaking, running an A-level course, expect a minimum of a grade 6 to be able to go on and study A-level. But I know that some level 3 providers accept entry onto computer science A-levels and level 3 qualifications without having studied computer science before. And for me, I think it's important that the level of English and maths is still quite high in order to be able to access the exam papers for one, which is ultimately how they're assessed, and to be able to write at the level that's required for success. So yeah, that's it from me. If there's any questions, I will take them at the end. But I will pass back now to Tim.
That's great. Thank you. Great opening gambit there from Sarah. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Claire. Claire is a teacher. I should explain, Claire is not on camera, unfortunately, but Claire is there, aren't you, Claire?
Yes, I am here, yes.
Just checking. Cool. So I'm just making you a panelist, Claire, and I'll introduce you. So Claire is a teacher based at a school in Northamptonshire and has been teaching for 7 years. Claire teaches computing all key stages, 3, 4, and 5, and has been an exam marker for GCSE. Oh, I like the animation, that's nice. An exam marker for GCSE and A-level, and also has experience of teaching the Cambridge Technicals, so level 3 OCR. Claire is an established CAS Community Leader and is passionate about gaming, robotics, and anything that takes the learning further outside the classroom, which is anything that's competitive and involves team building and lots of fun. But anyway, we're on about GCSE to A-level, and Claire is going to be sharing some of her top tips and tricks for you right now. So over to you, Claire.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'm here talking about GCSE to A-level transition and what has helped me deliver the A-level. We've been delivering to my school for the last 2 years. And the main reason I put the rubber ducks on the front of the presentation is that I still include them with A-level. I found that within GCSE, it helped a lot of female students have the resilience and the confidence to take my subject further. So, and I've also seen an increase into the A-level computer science year on year. I started off with 1 girl, and now I've got a total of 4 girls in year 12. So I'm definitely going to keep the feature of the rubber ducks with the programming. Then other things that I've used that has helped prepare my students, and again I'll reiterate what Sarah was saying, is that is a lot of flipped learning, it's a lot of independence for the students. So based on induction days, I talk about the how the course is set up, and then I also set them a summer project. Now, the summer project, part of it is theory as well as practical, and it's using the resources within the ISAC computer science. They have a GCSE to A-level transition modules, which cover, I think off the top of my head, 6 of the topics that are on A-level, because there is a large gap between GCSE and A-level, and those students who we want to study the course, we need them at a certain level by the time they get to us in September. Then to help with their programming further on is that I use a free course for our students. It's over 4 weeks. It's on Future Learn, and that is to do with the OOP project, and it talks them through how OOP, object-oriented programming, works, how it's set up. And then I also get them to create their own project. Examples have been in the past using Pokemon characters and building classes using those Pokemon characters that they should be familiar with. But also gets them doing a little bit of investigating as well, because when they come to do their NEA later on in year 12, beginning of year 13, it gets them researching and looking at different things that they may have not seen before. So I would expect those to be done over the sort of summer holidays. So then we've got a foundation ready for September. I have had students in the past that haven't done computer science at GCSE, and they found doing the ISAC computer science and the Future Learn is giving them that foundation that they need. So not just turning up in September, not knowing really much at all, and then relying on the lessons to be their foundation, so they can then build upon that. Within the lessons, I use a range of resources from Craig and Dave to the HODA workbooks, and I've got an example. This one's the AQA, but they also do OCR as well, which is what I teach with the A-level. I did start off with AQA, but found it very technical, so we moved to OCR for the year 12s. And this workbook just complements the course. Any homework questions to do with the topics, as well as extra exam questions as well that we can go through as a class to then prepare them for their mini assessments that we do in class, as well as their official mocks throughout school. And that is me for the moment, so I'll hand back to Tim.
I am back in the room. Thank you very much, Claire. That's great. Cool. Let me just share, pass over to Javier. A little introduction to Javier. Javier, are you there?
Indeed, I am.
Cool. So our third speaker today is Javier. Javier is has been teaching computer science at key stages 3, 4, and 5 for over 12 years, and in 3 schools. His current role is as an assistant principal at the CAS Academy in Wolverhampton, and which involves leading on T&L, digital technologies, and computer science. He's also the long-standing CAS community leader for Wolverhampton Secondary Community and an NCCE facilitator for CPD. For teachers, Javier, as you will see, is very passionate about computing. In particular, his two key passions are computational thinking and problem solving. He believes that these are the 2 key skills that can transform the lives of pupils and make a difference to them in the community. Javier, over to you.
Thank you so much, Tim, and hi everybody. Thank you everybody for being here, and my take's slightly different because of the last few years. I've been helping teachers, trainees, and colleagues to move from teaching GCSE to A-level, and it is really important, the support, the CPD, the preparation we do to be able to teach it confidently and to teach it in an engaging way. So I'm going to take you through, I mean, I just had an NQT last year, and it transitioned from business studies to computer science, and for September it's going to be confidently, it's going to be teaching year 12 computer science. So it's been quite a journey for her, and so I'm going to share what I've been doing in terms of preparing myself quite a few years ago when I moved from IT and MFL to computer science, and what I do now. The first step is knowing the specifications and identifying the areas that you are going to find that are quite more demanding, from not only from a student point of view, from a teacher point of view, and you've got there identified in circle in red. You have the elements that, in my opinion, need more work and need more work over time from a teaching point of view to be able to teach it, and not only confidently but also in, as I said, in an engaging way. And no surprise is I reiterate what my colleagues said in terms of computational thinking is a big element that is much more demanding, and it takes more time for anybody to get their heads around it. Algorithms are very demanding, and in terms of the programming project, you need to know, for example, object-oriented programming. You need to know about recursion, and you need to know quite advanced elements that will take time to get your head around it if you were transition for GCSE to A level. Okay, in terms of component one, these are the elements that, in my opinion, and based on my experience, new teachers transitioning from GCSE to A level need to work more on, which is software development and databases and web technologies are things that are, well, depending on the examining board for GCSE, there are a slight variation, but it doesn't vary much anyway. So these are, and in my opinion, this is not so much of a problem because it's theory and you can get good resources. I'm going to share some of the MOOCs and some of the resources that I use and I advise my colleagues that I support within my department to use to get up to grips with these topics. So there are books. I'm not going to mention any books. There are lots of textbooks for A level and not necessarily for A level that you can use in order to get up to speed with these theory topics. The more demanding are going to be the items, the new content within the specification for A level within component. Talking about OCR specifically, because these are specifications for OCR, which is the examining board that we use here. And no surprises, elements of computational thinking, abstraction, decomposition, thinking ahead concurrently, advanced algorithms, and be able to analyze, be able to design, develop, and evaluate an extensive programming project. For example, object-oriented, this is an example of object-oriented programming. This is something I start with, very basic, and you need to be able to create classes, you need to be able to attribute some methods within the classes, you need to be able to create instances, inheritance, and etc. So object-oriented programming is really important, and that's actually part of component one as well, because they need to know the theory, but they need to apply it within component two as well. Really important that that we as teachers, we know this inside out, so we can pass it on, because it can be quite dry, it can be quite challenging. So it's very important that we get to grips with it before we actually get ourselves in front of the children. There's lots of materials I'm going to share with you, and encapsulation is really important that they know about encapsulation as well within object-oriented programming. So the paradigms in comparison with procedural programming, for example, which they've been exposed in GCSE potentially, and things like complex algorithms and recursion, things that are quite challenging for students, and things that are quite challenging for, I mean, a few years ago, this wasn't even part, recursion wasn't even part of the A-level specification, it was mainly university. You can see that you need to teach students source code, but also the pseudocode is specific for that exam board. In terms of resources, whatever exam board you use, you've got resources up there for OCR, lots of assessment resources. Please, attend, if you're transition and attend the webinars or the face-to-face training that they do. The introductory one is free, so there are lots of free resources. And if you contact them, they should be able to put training in place for you or advise you what training you need in order to transition. Training resources, lots of assessment resources, and lots of resources for students as well. I think my colleagues mentioned that already. In terms of resources to train yourselves or to advise colleagues, lots of MOOCs. The one I use the most is EDX. They're free unless you want the certification. You can follow the courses, you can get them the activities and the projects and everything. You can follow it. You only pay if you want the certificate. Coursera is another one. It used to be free. Just double check and don't click on the pay one. Click on the free one, so you don't get the certification, but you get the learning. Websites like Khan Academy. Someone mentioned already ISAC, computer science, really good resource for teachers and also for students. Udacity as well. Computing in school, you've got a community that run lots of courses and lots of sessions, and obviously NCC courses as well to do with GCSE, but A level as well, different levels. And to finish with, that's the ISAC computer science. The trainee that I had last year that now is going to be teaching year 12 in September went through all the learning from ISAC computer science and other resources, and in order to learn themselves before he's going to teach it actually. And they are really good resources with lots of practical activities and tests and quizzes. And I think team, I'm done.
Excellent. I always like it when we end with a kitten picture, I have to say. Javier, Claire, and Sarah, thank you. Right, Pete, are you there? Do we have any questions?
Hi, Javier. And Tim, I'm just going to look at questions. I've got a couple of questions in. Do pop in any more questions as I'm going through these if you've got anything. So I guess just over to all of you really. So how would you handle new students joining in year 12 that might not have studied computer science at GCSE or have been at your school previously? So how would you handle that dilemma?
Can I answer that one?
Go for it.
Okay, cool. So what we've done in the past is that we've let them onto the course, but we've told them that by the November mark, there is a criteria that you have to be at a B or above to carry on with the course. If they get to November and they're not at that B, then what we have offered them is the IT Cambridge Technicals, so they haven't like lost a subject or anything like that. Then if they're very close to that B, then by November we've then given them sort of intervention lessons, and if there's any freeze that they come into like a GCSE computer science class that matches up with myself, then they can do that also.
Excellent, thank you, Claire. Javier, did you want to add anything onto that, or Sarah?
Previously, I mean, obviously, I don't have that where I currently am, in that we don't have a sixth form. But in my previous schools, I've always taught up to A level, and it's the same process that Claire's done, really. In that there's a baseline assessment. We would expect some pre-learning to be done between the end of GCSE and the start of A level, and that's given out, as Claire mentioned in her presentation, during the transition day and the taster days. And it goes for any student really, regardless of whether they've studied computer science before. But if they turn up to the first lesson of an A level having not done the pre-learning, then I would question why are they on my course, and there would be conversations had with the student. But we would monitor, like Claire did, a baseline assessment to start off with, and then by the November end of first term, sort of the suitability of the course testing. Really, it's been known at in its different guises at different schools. It would then be a case of if they're not meeting a particular standard, then an alternative would be offered, such as the Cambridge Technical or a BTEC in the past, for that same reason, as Claire said. And I think that's a logical move for a lot of schools.
Brilliant. I think this one's probably directed to Javier. So I've got, well, just because you were talking about the programming project. So what advice would you give to teachers who are new to the programming project, Javier, if it's something they've not come across before at A level?
The first one is quite easy. Just do it yourself. just follow the process. Make sure you. One thing that is changed over the years, and one thing that we need to realize and we need to pass on students, is that they need to cooperate within the programming project, not to tackle something that is out of the capacity and capability, and something that is going to take them so much time that they're going to neglect the 80% of the rest of the A level. But they need to incorporate all the elements of programming within the specifications, and that's really important in terms of recursion, in terms of algorithms, set algorithms, sorting and searching algorithms. Ideally, object-oriented programming, even though it's not a requirement 100%, but it's ideal GUI. So to go through all the elements of programming and computational thinking within the specification, make sure they are able to put that into planning, design, and implementation, and to create a programming project or two programming projects themselves, maybe at smaller scale, not over so many months. That way they will know what. That's the first thing I did, so I know exactly what the students are going to encounter, what barriers, what hurdles they're going to encounter, and at which point, very important to set checkpoints, at which point I feel that they will need more support. If they're stuck on something, I need to make sure I look ahead and I forecast where they're going to struggle with. Very, very important. I don't know if I answered the question.
I think you did, absolutely. Thank you. So I've got a question that's just come in, which I think we've kind of was roughly covered, but it'd be good to just sort of summarize on it. Is what's the minimum grade for English and Maths for level 3?
I would argue that you need at least a 6 in English and Maths. Arguably, a student with a 5 isn't unsuitable. However, if you go back to sort of old money grades, the usual standard requirement for an A-level course is a grade B. So you're looking at a grade 6, and that's purely, in my professional opinion, due to the level of written English that is required for success in the exam. You can have the best notes and the best verbal answers in a classroom setting of anyone, but if you can't communicate that in formal written English within your exam, and they are higher level reading papers, so if you actually have I'm sure Javier has, but if you've ever had an exam paper analysed, and Claire, sorry Claire, because you're not on my screen, I forgot you for a moment there. When you have the reading level, the age level of an exam paper assessed, you find that they are at the top end of A-level, as you'd expect them to be, but not all students are at that reading and writing level. And so when you get some exam papers that come in at over 18 as a reading age, students need to have that solid basis in English, potentially more than Maths. A good strong Maths level certainly helps with the Boolean algebra and the logic. I'm sure Javier will. I don't teach A level at the moment, and so the new specifications are a bit of an unknown to me, and I'm sure he can come in on that. But certainly logical thinking and that rational thought is arguably more useful than a higher Maths. English definitely is particularly important.
Thank you. The final one I've got, I don't know, Claire, if you want to drop in with this one, is what can we do at GCSE to help transition to object-oriented approaches? So what could we do down at GCSE to support that transition?
I usually get my year 11s to get some more sort of functions and making sure they upskill their programming in that way first, because I know a lot of students do with functions first before they then move on to the UP. But definitely the Future Learn course, both of my year groups have found really worthwhile, and there's nothing to say that you can't give that to year 11 and get them to run with that as well. Yeah, that's what I would have done at sort of GCSE level.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Can I just add something? Can I just add something, Peter? Sorry.
Yeah, of course you can. I mean, yeah, go for it.
No, it's once the year 11s they finish the course, what I'll do, obviously we've got identified or we have the interest of them who is going to do A level, and before we break up, they've got the opportunity to come to school, to carry on coming to school, and we do some work for object-oriented programming on turtles, for example. They have the background knowledge of. We do it graphically in Python with the module turtle, but they have the knowledge of classes and instantiation, and we go as far as we can with maybe inheritance and so on and so forth, so they get the basics. And it's a fun way. We try and make it fun, because at the end of the day we cannot force them to come back, but we have that facility for them to come back to school, and we make that investment because I think it's important. And many of them, what we find is that during the summer they play with it, they carry on playing with it, and they come in September, and not all of them, but they come in September and they are ahead of the others, so that's an advantage.
Could I just add, the Teach Computing website has a fantastic lesson resource for OOP as well. I think it's in the Key Stage 4 folder as well.
Brilliant, brilliant, thank you. So we're out of questions actually. So really good set of questions there, but I can't see any more coming in. So Tim, I'll hand back over to you.
Pete, thank you very much. Actually, a really good moment to take, really lovely to take a moment to reflect on what you've heard today and what things you're going to take away from the session to implement at your school, and how in terms of transition from GCSE to A level, whether this is something that you're practiced at in terms of what you're delivering, or whether you're bringing A level into your school for the first time. Wherever you're at, I hope that our speakers today have given you some good food for thought and some good tips as well. So once again, Sarah, Claire and Javier, thank you so much for sharing such great insight, and Pete, thank you for moderating. So at the end of this webinar, you will get a short survey. This will appear on the screen, and we would be immensely grateful if you take a moment to complete the survey. For those of you, and we have had questions asking, this session is being recorded and will be available on the CAS YouTube channel as soon as possible. And finally, there are loads of other sessions coming up over the next 10 days or so. And in fact, tomorrow, for example, Dr. Hazel Harrison, who's a very esteemed expert on all things well-being and health, we'll talk about this in a blended learning environment. She'll be our next keynote speaker. And at 5 p.m, please do join us over on Instagram. In fact, join us on the Computing at School Instagram page, because we're going to be doing an Instagram live with the fantastic Bethan Ware and my colleague Will Franklin, which will be really cool. If you haven't booked for these events or any of the others, please do get booking. Follow the hashtag CASVirtual21, and please continue to spread the word about computing at school. So that's all of us done for today. Thank you for joining. Have a great evening and see you at the next event. Bye bye for now. Thank you.